let me start by saying to the YouTube and Google gods, this is my opinion. So I'm going to often say in my opinion to make sure this video does not get censored. As we know, the tech overlords love to censor a video and rate it false. You cannot rate an opinion false, which is why I'm suing the fact checkers, which we'll get into later. The way that the has rigged this election has been through illusory elements. Everything has been one big, great illusion. Joe Biden was never a strong candidate against Donald Trump, but they were able to make people believe that he was with the help of the tech, the media, and just all of these other elements. So the first thing that I noticed was they crashed Trump's economy. So we saw that immediately. Going in to 2020, Trump was unbeatable. The economy was unbelievably strong. America was back as he had promised. There used to be that expression, it's the economy, which basically meant, okay, if this person has a strong economy, they are definitely going to be guaranteed a second term. And we just felt the red wave coming. And all of a sudden, a pandemic hits, right? The pandemic hits, and now we have to do something we have never done in the history of the United States during a pandemic. Let's not forget, the Revolutionary War was fought during a pandemic, the smallpox pandemic.
When the Revolutionary War begins, this is an extremely unsettling event.
In that day and age, it was normal that armies lost more men to disease than they did to battle. And the worst of the worst was smallpox.
And we've never seen our country shut down because of a flu, because of a swine flu. No, it's just never happened before. And yet they were insisting on going through these extraordinary means and creating this illusion of fear. They needed Americans to be fearful because Americans were not fearful going into 2020. Jobs were roaring back. Our economy was back. Things were booming. So what better way to make people fearful than to first and foremost tell them to eliminate their social circles, right? Telling Americans, okay, everybody go home now and rely on your screens to tell you what's going on in the world. That gives the media full control and full power. They're saying you can't see your family members, you can't see your friends, you can't gather. They needed to create this unbelievable sense of fear, an environment of fear, so that they could control the narrative. Now everyone has to listen to what the mainstream media tells them is going on outside, because you're not allowed to go outside. You're not allowed to go to church. Your children aren't allowed to go to school. Parents are terrified. They're saying all these things. You had people that were lying about babies dying. I mean, they terrified and traumatized America. And for the first time ever, we saw a death ticker. I mean, just think about the psychology behind that. Seeing a death ticker every single day telling you how many Americans are allegedly dying, censoring people that are coming out and saying, my dad died of cancer. I don't know why on his death certificate they wrote COVID-19. Anybody who wrote that and told the truth was immediately censored. They were saying that sharing this information was dangerous, and we all just needed to rely on the CDC and WHO to tell us exactly, the World Health Organization to tell us exactly what was going on. Doctors, never talk about a communist country. Doctors were being censored. Doctors that were saying, hey, I have a different perspective about this COVID-19 stuff. Yes, it's real, but a little bit of vitamin C, hydroxychloroquine, censored, gone, demonized, taken off of platforms, taken off of YouTube, taken off of Facebook. Again, stuff that we just have never seen in America. And just to go back to that death ticker, imagine, take anything else, take car accidents. Imagine if every single day on the media, they showed you a death ticker of how many people were getting into car accidents.
I was curious, so I looked up how many people die in accidents every year. And this is what popped up. This is the first thing that popped up. It said approximately 1.35 million people die in road crashes every year. An average of 3,700 people lose their lives every day on the road. An additional 20 to 50 million suffer from non-fatal injuries, often resulting into long-term disabilities. Wow, that's amazing. I don't think I'm gonna drive today. All right, just imagine if they show this every day. As Candace Owens stated, it'll make people rethink driving. All right, let's continue.
You would probably never get in your car. It was intentional. It was to traumatize and scare Americans and to give the media the power to report whatever they said to be a fundamental truth, and we were not allowed to challenge it. So that was the easiest way for them to first and foremost get Americans scared. The second element was, of course, the pandemic brought them an amazing opportunity to hide their candidate. Never before has there been a presidential election where you've never seen the presidential candidate. We didn't start seeing Joe until about September, when I think he emerged from his basement to do an interview with Cardi B, one of the great thinkers and intellectuals of our time.
When she was growing up, she'd call me Joey B. So we may be related or something.
Yep, Cardi B and Joey B.
He was hiding, and they were saying, oh, it's because of the pandemic, it's because of safety. The operative word in this exercise was safety. For our safety, we had to stay home. For our safety, our churches had to be shut down. For our safety, they had to remove differing doctor opinions from Facebook. And now for our safety, Joe Biden was being responsible by hiding. Don't you guys understand? What a brilliant exercise of that idea. So Machiavellian, because people were noticing this guy seems like he's mentally deteriorating, seems to be having some issues gathering his words, said he was running for Senate at one point.
Wow. And I have a simple proposition here. I'm here to ask you for your help. Where I come from, you don't get far unless you ask. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate.
Now, he said he's running for the Senate again. He forgot he was running for president. But that's Joe Biden for you.
Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other Biden.
Okay, now I'm confused on this one. Who in the world is the other Biden?
Saying really absurd things, and yet they kept running him as a candidate. So that was another phase of that. And it also gave them the ability, of course, if you're going to use your census to determine who's going to win an election, no matter what the media tells you, you will believe your own eyes. So they needed to make sure that they controlled you seeing your own eyes. And what I mean by that is that they told Trump it was irresponsible for him to have his rallies. They were dubbed super spreader events, all these terms, super spreader to have it. And Joe Biden, who could not even sell out a cafeteria, a high school cafeteria, was just being responsible. It wasn't because nobody was backing him. It was because he was just being responsible. So we had no way to measure the crowd size of seeing Joe Biden versus Trump until the very end, where Trump just sort of said, forget it. And then we saw these mass audiences, at the MAGA rallies versus what looked to me like drive-in movie theater events that Joe Biden was hosting with maybe 10 of his closest friends. Even in those things, though, try to look up Joe Biden's events, these drive-in events he was doing. The media refused to show the crowd, right? So when you see a Trump rally, you see the whole crowd, you see aerial shots. The media was intentionally panning in on Joe Biden's face. You guys recall that? And he's like shouting, and it sounds like he's getting no feedback, a couple of honks. I don't know if a honk means a boo or a yay, who knows? He would be, and we need to do this, and Trump's this, and Trump's that. Literally, the idea that the media would not show anything beyond just a facial shot of Joe Biden was a part of this system of rigging. They wanted no assessment because anybody would say, this is absurd. He obviously has no audience, nobody following him, and obviously Trump's going to win, but they needed to erase that. Another element, financial rigging, right? So where was the left going to get the money when they did this rigging? That's one way to measure who's winning, right? Trump came in with so much money in 2020, was outraising all the Democrat candidates month after month after month. Where was Joe Biden going to get this money? He clearly did not have the support of a lot of people in America. Well, I mean, I've been asking, it was really interesting to see that even though we weren't allowed to go to schools or churches, that suddenly they were condoning protests and Black Lives Matter, which I have said, in my opinion, Google, in my opinion, and you can't fact check this because you guys refuse to tell the truth, where does all of the billions of dollars go when Black Lives Matter raises billions of dollars off the faces of dead Black people? So Black Lives Matter, in a span of like 48 hours, had raised something crazy like $30 million in the first 48 hours following George Floyd's death. Black Lives Matter is a $1 billion organization. Where's the money going? Shouldn't there be Black schools, Black schools that have been built? I don't know, maybe some Black businesses that have been funded and can say I received $100,000 from Black Lives Matter organization. They seem to come around every election cycle and suddenly raise a ton of money, and nobody has asked the question of where all the money goes. It is not going to Black lives. We then found out that they were using the payment processor ActBlue. That's correct. ActBlue weird. And why would a organization that has nothing to do with politics, allegedly, be using Act Blue as their payment processor? We find out that they're not a 501c3, which you would not be able to claim 501c3 if you are going to be used for politics, and that they've decided to use Act Blue, which their stated purpose is to help Democrats get elected. So to me, this was the mechanism that was behind Joe Biden's campaign. In my opinion, it has not been disproven. I have been saying this since March, April, on the record that Black Lives Matter is a quiet DNC funding mechanism that was put into place in 2015. It's been tremendously effective. It's why Black Lives Matter goes away until it's the next election cycle and nobody cares about Black lives or who's dying and things of that nature, because it's great for fundraising because white guilt is extremely profitable. Show an image of a Black person, say, oh, this person, was killed unjustly by a police officer, and suddenly white people and their guilt, and they're posting Black squares, and oh my God, I got to get into the business of white guilt. Maybe that's my plan for 2021. I got to figure out how I can just extract dollars from these guilty white people.
Okay, they did an investigation of verification, but the people that they are asking to verify this is the people that are receiving the money, and you got Act Blue. So what do you think the outcome will be if you ask those people? But here you go.
The Instagram post claims donations to Black Lives Matter website go directly to the DNC, and that BlackLivesMatter.com appears to be an international money laundering program used by the Democratic National Committee. Joshua, Cheryl, and Aaron saw it and asked the verified team, does the money raised for the Black Lives Matter movement go directly to the Democratic Party? We have three sources for this. The Black Lives Matter Foundation, Act Blue, that's the charity that provides the online donation platform, and Michael Melvin, professor of political science at the University of New York, Albany, and director of the Campaign Finance Institute. What's the first thing that came to your mind when you saw the post?
My first reaction was that either somebody doesn't know what he or she is speaking about, or the poster is trying to make a cheap political shot.
Different versions of the post have surfaced. One claims Act Blue is funneling a portion of the donations made to Black Lives Matter to the Democratic Party. Black Lives Matter took to Twitter to debunk conspiracy theories about the donations. Act Blue issued a statement saying, in part, this is entirely false. When you donate to Black Lives Matter through Act Blue charities, your donation goes to Black Lives Matter. So we can verify these claims are false.
So that was another way that they were, I feel like that was the financial backbone behind this great rigging. And China is just, everything about China right now is shady. You're telling me a nation of 1.3 billion people were able to knock out the coronavirus in 2 weeks. What was it, 3 weeks maybe? 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And they're back to business. They're good. They're open for business, guys. They're good. They got this under control.
China has declared victory over the coronavirus, following 9 whirlwind months for first responders, scientists, and party officials. After denying the severity of the virus and initially underreporting numbers, Beijing now says that it can keep the pandemic at bay. For normal Chinese, life and community are slowly edging back to normal.
Look at the numbers of infection rates. They're like 10 people were infected this week. 3 people were infected this week. If anybody watching this has been to China, it's just an impossibility. Meanwhile, we're being told you can't breathe. If you touch something, it remains on the surface. Oh, the infection rates are just getting higher and higher and higher. We're all going to die. But China was able to figure this out in 5 seconds, guys. So they took the blame and then just sort of moved on, and their economy is back up and everything's good. In fact, the person who got the wealthiest during this spell, if you're looking at people that increased their net worth, actually wasn't Jeff Bezos. It was Jack Ma. Is that his correct name? Jack Ma in China. Look up how much money he's made. It is incredible how much money he has made off of the coronavirus. And he is incredibly wealthy, and he's a Chinese businessman. pieces together here, and I actually had a thought. And think about Russian collusion. That was like a very aggressive lie that the left told, right? So why Russia? Why did the left, the second that Donald Trump won, go after this theory of Russian collusion, which was completely made up out of thin air, but it took 2 years to determine that it was made up out of thin air, right? The media went with the Russian collusion, Russian collusion, Russian collusion. In my opinion, the reason that was done was to make sure that Donald Trump did not link arms with Vladimir Putin. And what I mean by that is that if Donald Trump had extended arms at that moment with Vladimir Putin and did any type of business with Vladimir Putin, it would have completely exploded China. The biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? The only country that can stand to stop China from taking over the world, the country that is the best positioned to do that is Russia. They are their neighbor and they are a nuclear power, right? So imagine if the West, if Donald Trump started negotiating and doing deals with Russia, which he should do. And personally, if I was the president of the United States, that would be a perfect way to address the fact that China is basically taking over the world right now. I would be like, all right, Vladimir Putin, come to the table. Let's see what we can get done. That would be the art of the deal for me if I was president of the United States, quite frankly. All of the spooking about Russia was to make sure, it was an insurance policy to make sure that Donald Trump could not have any effective conversation, communication, or do anything with Russia. I think China hit that button behind closed doors and said, make sure that America and Russia stays fractured by pretending that Russia meddled in our elections. They did not. I actually think China meddled in our elections, and they meddled in foreign policy by ensuring that Donald Trump would stay away from Vladimir Putin and not do, just have any sort of a relationship with him. Again, my opinion, but that would just sort of make perfect sense, because why Russia got thrown in, it was crazy. Russian collusion was a complete and utter delusion, but the Democrats were effective at separating Trump and Vladimir Putin when we should have doing, they are the best guard against China taking over the world is Russia. Just from a geographical standpoint, they are a nuclear power, and that is something that Trump should have done, but he couldn't because Russian collusion